Hello everyone. Hey class, how you doing? Once again, Dr. Peoples trying to record a lesson for my class. The lesson I'm going to be recording right now is going to be a review lesson, basically how to factor. Something you should have learned a couple of years ago. Just want to show you all the types of factoring, and once again, it's a prerequisite for being able to solve rational equations. So start off with problem one. I got 6 problems. Some of them are going to look pretty similar, but I want to make sure I go into great detail how you can figure out how to factor, how you can get your answer. You should be able to consistently get these answers. Alright, so you have x squared minus x minus 12. Alright, the majority of the problems we're going to be solving aren't going to have, they're not going to have a number or a coefficient in front of your x squared or your b squared or your quadratic portion. So if you look at problem one, it didn't have a variable in front. That makes your problem a little easier, a good bit easier to be honest. So since there's no number in front, you don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is look at your 12, come up with all the combinations of how you can get 12. Alright, so in your mind you should be saying 1 times 12, 2 times what? 2 times 6, 3 times 4, and so on. Alright, and then you want to go through and figure out which one you can multiply, add or subtract to get the middle number. Alright, and see how the middle number has a minus 1, even though it doesn't say 1, that little negative x means negative 1x. So you're going to say to yourself, the only one that you can add or subtract and get a negative 1 is going to be 4 times 3. Alright, because if you see if you multiply 4 times, or if you subtract 4 minus 3, you get a 1. Doesn't matter what the sign is right now, as long as the difference is a 1, either adding or subtracting. Alright, if you added, it's 7, but we know we subtracted, we get 1. So, what you want to do then is put parentheses. You want to say x and x. That'll be your next mental thought process. X and x gives me x squared. And what you're doing is in your head is you're checking using the FOIL method. And you know 4 and 3 gives you 12. Alright, once you get your numbers, the correct numbers, where you add and subtract and you get the middle number being 1, then that's where the signs come into play. Alright, if you look at the negative 12, you have subtract 12 or negative 12. 4 times 3, the only way you can get a negative 12 is by having one of them positive, one of them negative. Because if you have positive, positive, it's going to give you a positive. If you have negative, negative, it's going to give you a positive. So you know one has to be positive, one has to be negative. The only way you can possibly get a negative 1 is by having the bigger number be negative. Alright, so that lets me know the bigger number must be negative, the smaller number must be positive. And the reason you know that is because you know that negative 4 plus 3 gives you negative 1. This is what's going on in your head. Negative 4 plus 3 gives me negative 1. Alright? And you can check that by using the FOIL method. Simply go x times x gives you x squared. Then you can do x times negative 4, it gives you negative 4x. X times 3 gives you 3x. And then 3 times negative 4 gives you negative 12. I'll write that down so you can see what I just said. Alright, this is what I just showed you, or I just verbally said. Now I wrote it down. Then if you collect your two middle terms, you see how that's negative 1 in the middle? Negative 4x plus 3x gives you negative 1. So you got x squared minus x minus 12, which gives you your original, that's your check. It gives you your original problem. Lets you know you did it right. Alright, so in problem 1 I showed you how to get the answer, your parentheses, and factoring, by the way, is parentheses. So if we were factoring, you would stop right here at the parentheses where you have x plus 3x minus 4. Alright, I just showed you how to check, just so you can have that as a skill. That way you can know if you're right or wrong by simply check by using the FOIL method. Now, in all other problems, I might not check using the FOIL method. Alright, for problem 2, Alright, this is problem 2. X squared plus 10x plus 6. Alright, now, I'm sorry, it's supposed to be plus 16, because that wouldn't be factored. So let me put a plus 16 right there. So once again, it's x squared plus 10x plus 16, not 6. Okay. So now, we have our problem. The first thing you want to do is say to yourself, there's no coefficient in front of x squared, so you know you don't have to worry about that. All you got to do is say to yourself, what are my possibilities? How can I multiply and get 16? You know, 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. I said 2 times 8 already. So that's your possibilities. Then you want to ask yourself, out of my possibilities, which one, if I add or subtract, will give me a 10? Alright, you should be able to do this in your head. But if not, you can write them down, all your possibilities. And you should pick 2 times 8. Alright? So it's more of a mental process, but if you have to write it down, you very well could. 2 times 8. And the reason I'm choosing that is because, obviously, if you subtract 8 minus 2, you get 6, which is not the middle number. But if you add 8 plus 2, you get 10, which is what we want. Alright, so once you figure that out, the next thing is to go ahead and come up with your parentheses. We know x goes in the front, because there's no coefficient in the front. Then you simply put in your 8 and your 2. So this is where we're at right now. You got your parentheses, x2 and x and then 8. Now we come up with our signs. We're trying to figure out what sign goes where. Alright, this one's easy because you have a positive in both of them. Say you got plus 16, you got plus 10. So that tells you it has to be positive. Alright? The only way you can get a positive 16 is by doing plus 8 and plus 2, or negative 8 and negative 2. But since you see the plus 10 in the middle, you know it has to be positive. Alright? So it's plus 8 and plus 2. And to be honest with you, the only ones you probably will have an issue with is when it's not positive. You know, because that's the ones that you might miss the signs on. And that's where you got to check mentally. Alright, this problem 2. You can check it by FOIL later on, but for time's sake, I'm just going to keep on going. Let me get my board right first. Alright, problem 3 is going to be x squared minus 10x plus 16 if you're writing it. Give me a second to get my board dry and then I'll start up. Alright, this is problem 3. X squared minus 10x plus 6. Alright, plus 16. Alright, you notice it's very similar to the last problem. What I wanted to do is show you how the signs would change your answer. That's all I did was change the signs. That's why I was looking like, okay, is it the same problem? It is. Alright, so what I'm going to do is go through the same process as if you didn't do this problem previously. Obviously, you're going to say 16, what can you multiply, or your factors. What can you multiply to get 16? 1 times 16, 2 times 8, so forth. Alright, and we did it before. 10, the middle number would be 10, so you know it's going to be 2 times 8. The only difference is that you have a negative 10 now. Previously, your answer was 2 times 8, or plus 2 and plus 8. Now, because you got that minus 10, that means your signs would change. And it will be x minus 2, x minus 8. That's the only difference between the two problems. So that's the real reason I wanted to show you that. I just want to show you how the signs would change your answer. Alright, let me show that again just in case you didn't get a chance to look at that very well. That's number 3. And it's very similar to 2 except the signs change. All right, let's go with 4. All right, this is problem 4. X squared plus 3x minus 10. And you notice I'm using the same process every time. Every time I'm looking to see in front of my x squared or in front of my quadratic term, which is your a in your quadratic standard form. So in front of x squared, you're just trying to see if you have a number. In this case, you don't have a coefficient. You don't have a number. So you just go on and go to your c term then. You're going to go to the one that has the constant. And you're going to say 10. What can I do, or what are my possibilities or factors for 10? You know you can do 1 times 10, 2 times 5, and that's it. So you got 2 possibilities. 1 times 10, 2 times 5. Now, out of those 2 possibilities, if you add 1 plus 10 is 11, 10 minus 1 is 9. That doesn't give you the middle number, so you know it has to be the 2 and the 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. 5 minus 2 is 3. So you know it has to be 2 and 5. And you know one of them is going to be positive, one is going to be negative. That's the reason we do the positive, adding and subtracting. Alright? Now to figure out which one is positive, which one is negative again, because it's negative 10, we know it has to be 1 positive, 1 negative. The plus 3 tells us that the bigger number has to be positive, because we want more positives than negatives. That's the reason you got plus 3 there. So you can go ahead and slide the plus 5 and then make the 2 the minus 2 or negative 2. So it's x minus 2, x plus 5. And you can check it using FOIL method if you feel like it later on. Alright, so those are traditional factoring problems. 1 through 4 was traditional, where you simply look at your C term and you say, okay, what are my factors? What can I multiply to get that number? And then from there, you simply see which factor can you add or subtract to get the middle term, and then you determine the signs, like I showed you in 1 through 4. Now let's look at 5 and 6. 5 and 6 they're not trinomials. They're just going to just have 2 terms. Alright, still quadratic, but it's just 2 terms binomial. I can't get it looking right. Alright, hold on. Alright, there it is on the screen. So you got x squared minus 5x. Alright, looking at your 2 terms, you notice that you cannot factor traditionally with 2 parentheses because you only have 2 terms. Alright? So it's a quadratic with 2 terms. The only possibility is for you to factor out one of your variables. In this case, you see you have x in both terms. So you simply factor out x. Alright, and that is considered to be simplified. X parentheses x minus 5. That is actually factored. Even though it doesn't look like the ones above, it's still factoring. You still have simplified it, you've factored out an x. That's what it's called. Just looks a little different, that's all, between 1 through 4. And you would check this by using the distributive property. Simply multiply back x times x, giving you x squared. X times negative 5, giving you negative 5x. So check by using the distributive property. Alright, last one I'm going to do is 6. Very similar to 5. Just want to make sure when you get to your assignment you have no issues. Alright, if you look at number 6, you have 4k squared plus 3k. Alright, you notice it's 2 terms. As soon as you see 2 terms, you know that you're probably not going to factor. There is a type you can factor, but pretty much we know you're probably going to be factoring out a variable. Alright, you see 4 and 3, you can't factor out a number. Now if that was 4 and 2, you know you can factor out a 2. But in this case it's 4 and 3, so you can't factor out a number. You just factor out the k. So your answer for that would be k parentheses 4k plus 3. And that is factored. Check by using distributive property. K times 4k gives you 4k squared, and k times 3 gives you 3k. Alright, I have reviewed how to factor. It's a prerequisite for being able to solve your rational equations, which is going to be the next video I record, which is our primary lesson. But you must know how to factor, and you must know how to find a GCF for your greatest common factor. You must be able to find a GCF for your rational equations in order to be able to solve them. So that's 2 videos I just went over. Alright, this video is complete. I hope that I've helped you today on how to solve or how to factor basic quadratics.